She asked for rain. She didn't know the price. Was her brother's soul? The storm came just after sundown. The sky didn't just roar, it screamed. Thunder cracked so sharp. It sounded like the earth split clean in two. Lightning tore across the clouds like a jagged signature from an angry god, and within seconds, the heavens opened, not in mercy, in madness. In the center of the village square, a woman stood barefoot on cracked, thirsty soil. Her skin glistened like obsidian under the downpour. A red head wrap clung to her skull like a soaked crown. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She didn't speak. Mama Oya never needed words. Around her, people cried, some in joy, others in horror. They had begged for this, pleaded for weeks, offering mangoes, old coins, bottles of rum, even chicken blood. And now, it was here. But they all knew. Rain never comes free. Mama Oya raised one hand. Thunder obeyed. Somewhere behind the old schoolhouse, the wind carried the sound of a child's laughter, high-pitched, joyful, then cut short, abrupt, gone. A woman screamed, "Mikey, where's Mikey?" The crowd turned. Some ran slipping in the mud. Others stood frozen, eyes fixed on Mama Oya, whose face held no expression, whose gaze burned like twin suns behind the curtain of rain. One boy was gone. No footprints, no struggle, no trace. Only a small puddle where he had stood with a single white feather floating on top. The preacher dropped to his knees. His wife screamed until her voice broke. Mama Oya whispered something no one could hear, then turned and walked away. The storm followed her like a loyal dog. That was the first soul. And it would not be the last. The heat that day was violent. Not the kind that just burns your skin, but the kind that breaks people. The kind that makes dogs dig holes for shade, and kids forget how to play. Even the trees looked tired, their branches hanging low like broken limbs. And New Hope was dying. The riverbed had cracked into bone. The sugarcane fields had curled into themselves. People stopped praying for rain. They started whispering about curses, about punishment, about gods who had turned their backs and walked away. Then she came. No one saw where from. Some said she walked down from the hills. Others swore she rose out of the sea like a spirit. But everyone remembered one thing: the silence. Birds stopped singing. The wind held its breath. Even the stray goats near the church froze, ears twitching, eyes wide as if they, too, could feel it. Something was coming. She walked barefoot. Dust didn't cling to her skin. The earth didn't dirty her feet. It shifted slightly beneath her steps, not in worship, but in recognition. She wore a long wrap, the color of wet clay. A satchel hung over one shoulder, stuffed with river stones. A carved staff rested against her back, like it had grown there. Her face, sharp, proud, the kind of face you don't forget. Skin deep as black coffee, eyes flecked with gold like sunset dancing on oil, and lips drawn into a line that said, "I do not beg, I do not explain, I do not ask twice." The children were the first to go to her. Curious, brave, unafraid in that way only children can be, they danced around her, calling her Rain Woman before any adult had the courage to speak. She stopped at the village center right where the old well had dried up 3 months ago. Then she spoke. Her voice was low, measured, the kind of voice that had seen storms and lived to tell, "This land is thirsty." She looked up at the sky. But rain is never free. That evening, the elders gathered. Inside the church hall, its air thick with sweat and desperation. Its ceiling fans dead and dusty, they argued in hushed, broken voices. She's a witch, she's a savior, she's a warning. But none of them could deny what they had seen. The animals hadn't barked at her, the air changed when she walked past, and the ground, it smelled like rain. That night, Mama Oya, for that's what people had started calling her, lit 3 candles outside her hut. 1 for water, 1 for wind, and 1 for the price that must be paid. She didn't ask for money, didn't want gold, didn't care for gifts. She simply said, "Bring your offerings to the field by first light. I will call the sky, but the sky will answer with hunger." And still they came, because hope in new hope was a fragile, flickering thing, and desperation always bows to mystery. It began before the sun rose, before the roosters crowed, before the scent of boiled yam or salt fish touched the breeze. The field was full not with crops, but with people, silent, barefoot, waiting. They stood in a wide circle around the cracked cricket ground, eyes hollow, lips split and dry, each holding something they prayed would matter: a coconut, a Bible, a wedding ring, a goat's tooth, offerings. Mama Oya stood in the center, bareheaded, arms streaked with red chalk, skin glistening with oil, like she'd been carved from the earth itself. She didn't look at them, didn't look at the sky, only at the dirt beneath her feet, as if she was listening for something no one else could hear. Then she moved, slow at first, 1 foot forward, heel grinding into the dry soil. Then the staff struck the ground, once, twice, a 3rd time, and the wind shifted. The villagers gasped, not because of the breeze, but because something ancient stirred inside them, a crawling in the bones, like their bodies were remembering something their minds had long forgotten. Mama Oya began to hum. Not a song, not a chant, something older than words, a sound from the belly of the earth, low, then rising, like heat shimmering off steel. Children clung to their mothers, old men tightened their grip on canes. The goats let out 1 cry, then fell quiet. Then came the first drop. It landed on the forehead of a baby girl, nestled in her mother's shawl. Then another, and another, and suddenly the sky wept. People screamed, some fell to their knees, others laughed, delirious. After 7 months beneath a silent sky, it was pouring, thick, warm, holy water. It slammed against rooftops, filled every cracked bucket, and baptized barefoot children right where they stood. Mothers stripped their babies and raised them into the rain like offerings. Fathers kissed the soaked ground. A boy shouted, "It's a miracle she's a saint." But Mama Oya didn't move. Eyes closed, lips barely parted, still humming until her head snapped suddenly eastward. She inhaled once, and then, almost too soft to hear, "The sky has taken." They didn't find out until sunset. Little Amari, the preacher's niece, was gone. Her bed untouched, her shoes still by the door, her pink dress with the faded sunflowers folded neatly beneath her pillow. But she was gone. No scream, no note, no footprints in the rain-soaked earth. Only a single doll, floating in the rain barrel, its thread-wrapped neck swollen with water. By nightfall, the rain had stopped. Mama Oya sat cross-legged outside her hut, eyes closed. A thin line of smoke curled from a clay bowl beside her. No one approached. They watched from porches, from windows, from behind half-shut doors. They whispered, grateful for the rain, terrified of the price. Then she spoke, soft, final. Every storm feeds on something. And she dropped a single white pebble into the bowl. The flame died instantly. That night, no one slept easy. Yes, the crops had drunk. Yes, their buckets were full. But so was the silence. And somewhere inside that silence drifted the name Amari. Like a ghost with wet hair and missing eyes. The rain had barely dried on the rooftops when the village woke to the sound of a woman's scream. Not the usual kind, not a goat stolen or a lover's quarrel. This scream peeled paint off walls. It made the dogs fall silent. It came from the preacher's house. By the time the neighbors arrived, Sister Ruth was already on her knees in the mud, clutching an empty bedsheet and howling like the earth itself had stolen her lungs. "Mikey's gone," she cried. "He's gone. Lord, gone!" Inside, the boy's room looked untouched, the pillow still dented, his toy truck still on the floor. The Bible on the nightstand still open to Psalm 91. But Mikey, the 11-year-old with the crooked smile and the mango-stained shirt, was nowhere. They searched the yard, the back fence, even the latrine. Nothing. By mid-morning, all of New Hope was searching. From the banana groves to the river's edge, voices called his name. "Mikey, Mikey boy, answer me." Nah, no response. The only thing they found was a single small footprint pressed into the dirt behind the chapel, and a feather, white, soaked, stuck to the base of Mama Oya's staff, leaning quietly outside her hut. Preacher Samuel didn't knock. He burst through her door. "You took him," he growled. Mama Oya didn't even glance up. She was grinding herbs in a stone bowl, her fingers slow, deliberate, unfazed. "I called the rain," she said calmly. "The sky took what it was owed." He grabbed her by the shoulder. "I don't care what sky you talking about. That's my son." Still, she didn't blink. Your wife begged for water. Your son was standing in the storm. The clouds chose. The preacher's eyes filled with tears, not just grief, but helpless rage. You play God with people's lives. You dress in mystery, but you're just death in disguise. Mama Oya finally looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. I am no god, I am only the echo. By nightfall, the search had stopped, not because they gave up, but because even the dogs refused to follow the scent, because, for a brief moment, the river ran backward, because a second white feather drifted down from the sky with no clouds and landed at Sister Ruth's feet. Whispers swept through New Hope like dry brush on fire. They say she don't eat, just drinks rainwater and burns bones at night. My cousin swears he saw her talking to a tree, and the tree answered. She don't have a shadow, not when the moon's high. And always rain don't come free. Some wanted to banish her, some wanted to beg her, but none dared face her in the dark. 2 days later, Mama Oya walked into the village square. She laid 3 white stones on the ground, said nothing, met no one's eyes. When she left, a message remained carved into the dirt as if it had been burned there. To feed the sky is to spare the earth. Choose your thirst. That night, Sister Ruth stood by the dried-up well and sang lullabies into the wind. She sang until her voice broke. Then she sat. Then she rocked. And somewhere, far off, thunder rumbled. But no rain came, only silence, and the hollow, aching space where a child's laughter used to live. By the 4th day after the rain, the corn began to rise, small green fingers piercing the earth, the stench of thirst replaced by the rich, dark scent of wet soil. Women sang again, their voices rising over the splash of laundry at the stream. Children chased chickens, buckets on their heads, giggling in the sun. And yet no one laughed with their eyes anymore. The joy was hollow, because everyone knew Mikey was still gone. Inside the church, Preacher Samuel lit a black candle. Not white, not holy, black. The kind his grandmother once lit when someone was missing, but not yet dead. He stood before the congregation with cracked hands and sleep-starved eyes. She came with rain, he said slowly, voice shaking, but what did she take with it? Silence. Only Sister Ruth wept in the front row. She took my child, Ruth whispered. She fed my baby to the clouds, and we just let her. Old Mr. Devon stood up, the butcher, the biggest man in New Hope. She brought water, he said. Without her, we'd still be scraping mildew off walls just to drink. We begged for help, and help came. But help shouldn't take children. Ruth cried. That's not help, that's a deal with the devil. Later that night, by lantern light, a dozen men gathered behind the sugar mill. Whispers sharpened like blades. We need to talk to her. We need to warn her, or drive her out. She's cursed. That's what she is. But no one moved, because deep down, they all feared what might happen if the sky went dry again. Meanwhile, Mama Oya stood alone on the old cricket field. She poured red palm oil into a circle of white stones and dropped 3 green plantain leaves into the center. She whispered, but this time not to the sky. She whispered to the earth, to the roots, to the things beneath. At dawn, she walked into the village and placed something on the preacher's doorstep. A single calabash bowl. Inside water, floating on it a white feather, and beneath the feather a single grain of bloodied corn. The message was clear. Water has cost, and the debt had deepened. The village began to split. Some said she was sent by the ancestors, a vessel, a sacred woman walking between worlds to test them. Others said she was evil in a beautiful disguise, that her eyes weren't flecked with gold, but flecked with souls she'd stolen. Lines were drawn. Families grew cold. Neighbors stopped speaking. Even lovers stopped sharing beds. But no one confronted her. No one but Joel. Joel was 26, the son of a cane cutter. He'd lost 2 siblings to fever and a mother to fire. He had nothing left to lose except rage. He found her outside the river bend, gathering stones. "You think you holy," he spat. "You walk like you own the sky, but you're just a shadow in a pretty dress." Mama Oya didn't flinch. "You are angry," she said, "but not at me." "I'm angry 'cause I watched a child vanish and you call it balance." He stepped closer. "You think you're powerful. You bleed like the rest of us." He reached for her wrist, but before he could touch her, the wind howled. Sudden, sharp, a gust so strong it threw him back 5 steps. Mama Oya didn't move. She simply looked at him, her eyes deep wells full of names he would never know. Then she said, "I don't choose the price. I only carry the scale." Joel cursed, turned, and walked away. He disappeared 2 days later. They never found his body, but they found his shirt hanging from a breadfruit tree wet, with 2 white feathers sewn into the collar. And just like that, the whispers stopped. The threats vanished. Mama Oya returned to the field, and the clouds followed her like obedient beasts. But New Hope was no longer a village. It had become a bargaining table, a shrine, a warning, and every face wore the same silent question. How many souls is rain worth? His name was Joel August. He wasn't a preacher, not a scholar, but that boy could cut cane like the devil himself, fast, hard, relentless. He'd buried his baby sister with his own hands at 13, held his father's head as he died at 19, and by 26, he didn't fear anything anymore. So when the villagers began to bow, whispering thanks into calabash bowls, lighting candles for Mama Oya, Joel didn't join. He sharpened his machete and waited. The night before the next rain, he made his move. It was the kind of night thick with silence, the kind that makes your ears ring, because even the world seems to be listening. Clouds stalked the moon. The frogs went mute. Even the wind forgot how to breathe. Joel didn't knock. He walked straight into Mama Oya's compound, machete in hand, shirt tied around his waist, eyes burning like kerosene. She was seated in the center of a spiral drawn in ash and cornmeal. A gourd of smoke rested in her hands. She didn't move. "You took my cousin," he said, voice steady. "You took my neighbor's child. You took Mikey. You took Amari. And now you want more." Mama Oya blinked once, slowly. "You came with fire," she said softly, "but your soul burns for a different reason." He stepped closer. "You hide behind thunder and feathers, but you bleed like the rest of us. You're just flesh." He raised the machete. But then, the wind changed. Not rushed, not violent. It just shifted. And suddenly, the air grew heavy like the sky had sat down on his chest. The spiral on the ground shimmered. The smoke in the gourd turned black. And Mama Oya stood. "I do not ask the storm," she said. "I am the storm that was asked for." Joel hesitated. The machete trembled in his grip. He opened his mouth to shout, to curse, but something was pressing down on his lungs. Then, the candle beside her went out. No wind, just gone. He turned to run, but his legs wouldn't move. They found the machete the next morning, still warm, lying in the center of the spiral, now burned a full foot deep into the earth. Joel August was never seen again. No shoe, no scream, no trail. Just a single, perfect white feather tucked into the cracked handle of his blade. The village split again. Some said he tried to kill her. Others believed he tried to sacrifice himself to end the curse. But no one spoke too loudly, because thunder had returned, and now they knew. The rain listens. Mama Oya didn't leave her hut for 3 days. When she emerged, she carried a bowl filled with black stones. One by one, she placed them along the village edge, 12 in total, in a perfect circle. Children were forbidden to cross them. Pregnant women left offerings beside them, and the men, they didn't go near. That night, the rain came, but Mama Oya hadn't called it, and no one was taken. But when the village woke, they found something stranger still. A tree, tall, unfamiliar, impossibly full-grown. Standing dead center in the spiral, carved into its bark, storms do not kill, they reveal what is weak. From that day forward, no one said her name aloud. They called her Rain Mother, or she who speaks to clouds. They no longer begged her. They feared her, respected her, obeyed her. Because Joel August tried to fight the storm, and the storm didn't fight back. It simply erased him. Long before she was Mama Oya, she was just Ebele, a girl with laughter like bells and hair that always smelled of hibiscus oil. She was born far from Jamaica, on the banks of the Ogun River, where the elders said spirits could braid your dreams if you slept too close to the water. Ebele was the daughter of a healer, taught how to crush roots, how to speak to herbs, how to listen to silence. But no one ever taught her how to grieve. She fell in love once. His name was Kweku, a fisherman with strong hands and eyes soft as dusk, who once told her her voice sounded like rain before it falls. They built a hut near the water, painted it blue, filled it with mangoes, goat laughter, and quiet, hopeful dreams. For a time, it was perfect. Then came the drought. First, the chickens stopped laying. Then, the river began to crawl. Children cried in their sleep. Lips cracked. Tongues dry. Kweku's boat broke on a dry reef. No fish, no food. So Ebele went to the shrine. Not the village shrine, the old one. Buried deep inside the mangrove forest where no woman had stepped since the last blood moon. She knelt before a carved face with hollow eyes, and she whispered, "Give them water, take what you want, but let him live." The next morning, the sky split open. Rain came so fast, it turned sand into soup. Fields bloomed in hours. The people danced in the mud. But when Ebele ran home, the door to her hut stood wide open. Inside, silence. Kweku's body lay sprawled across the floor, eyes open, skin cold. In his mouth, a single white feather, and the smell of burnt yam and salt water. She screamed until her voice bled, held him for hours, until the village came to mourn. She said nothing. She just packed her herbs, her stones, and the staff her mother carved. Then she walked. She walked for months, across salt flats, past border lines, through cities that called her witch, ghost, god, until she reached the sea, boarded a boat, and came to the island where thunder hums in the soil, Jamaica. She built no home, no altar, no family, only rules. Rain comes only when asked. Rain never comes alone. Never love a man again. Years passed. The villagers changed, but the bargain did not. Every time they asked, she gave, and every time she gave, something was taken, until she no longer cried, because crying is water, and she had none left to spare. One night, under a half moon, she sat beside her fire. A child barefoot, maybe 7, wandered near. He didn't flinch, didn't beg, just stared at her with wide, curious eyes. "Do you miss him?" the boy asked. She looked up slowly. "Who?" "The man the rain took." She blinked. "Fertam, every day." The boy sat beside her. "Then why do you still call the rain?" She stared into the fire. "Because if she didn't, the world would burn." But she didn't say that. She only whispered, "Because someone must carry the sky." And in that moment, just for a breath, a single tear rolled down her cheek. The clouds above rumbled gently, but held their peace. They didn't plan it like a revolt. It started as a whisper, then a glance, then a quiet nod across the church pews, and clenched jaws behind closed doors. By the time the new moon rose, it had become a decision. She has to leave. Those were the preacher's words, his voice flat, tired. He hadn't shaved in weeks. His wife no longer spoke. "We have paid enough," he said. "This village is not a marketplace for souls." Some agreed out of fear, some out of guilt, but all of them thirsty, not just for water, for something they couldn't name. Control, peace, closure. That night, thunder rolled. No one had called it. Mama Oya hadn't stepped onto the field in days, but still the clouds came, thick, low, angry. Yet the villagers gathered anyway, with torches. The preacher led. Behind him, Mr. Devon with his machete, Sister Ruth clutching her psalms, and a dozen others wrapped in coats made of rage and rain. They stopped at her hut. No candles burned, no smoke from the roof, just silence. The kind that waits. Come out, the preacher called. Nothing. Mama Oya, Rain Mother, whatever name you wear, it ends tonight. Still, nothing. So they kicked the door open. Inside, the room was empty. No herbs, no gourd, no staff. Only a single bowl in the center, filled with clear water. Floating in it, 12 white feathers, each one a name. Amari, Mikey, Joel, and the others, some known, some never spoken aloud. The preacher fell to his knees. What is this? He whispered. Then the wind began to howl. Not outside, inside. Inside the hut, the bowl trembled, the feathers lifted, and her voice filled the room without a mouth. You summoned the storm, you fed it, you prayed for it, and now you blame me for the rain. Their torches burned blue. The windows exploded inward. One man screamed, another collapsed. The preacher dropped his Bible. By morning, the hut was gone. Not burned, not broken. Gone like it had never been there. In its place stood a stone. Smooth, tall, no words, only a spiral. The rain fell for 3 days. No one left their homes. Livestock drowned, huts flooded, children wailed in the dark. On the 4th morning, it stopped. The sky turned bone dry. The air went still. Not a single cloud remained. And it never rained again. The next harvest died in the dirt. The wells cracked like open mouths. People left quietly, desperately. New hope became nothing more than an echo. A story mothers told their children not to entertain, but to warn. Years later, a young girl passed through the ruins. She found the spiral stone, ran her fingers along its grooves. A chill crept up her spine. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Please, just a little water." Nothing happened. Until that night, when a single white feather floated down and landed softly on her windowsill. Mama Oya was never seen again. But sometimes when clouds drift over a land too proud to pray, too broken to remember, the rain comes not hard, not angry, just soft enough to remind them. The sky remembers, the debt never disappears, and somewhere, the woman who sells rain still walks. They called it New Hope, but when the rain left, it took the name with it. Now, it was just dust and silence, broken fences, collapsed roofs, wells that looked more like graves. The laughter of children had dried out like footprints in cracked clay. No one knew what became of the Rain Mother. Some say she turned into the tree that now stands where her hut once did, twisted, unburnable, with leaves that never move. Others believed she returned to the river that birthed her, flowing backward into myth. But a few, the ones who saw more than their eyes allowed, said she was never gone, only waiting. One day, a little girl no older than a Mari walked through the abandoned square with her grandmother. The old woman stopped before the spiral stone. She knelt, ran her wrinkled fingers along the groove. "This," she whispered, "is where we forgot our gratitude, where we demanded miracles and cursed the hands that gave them." The girl looked up. But wasn't she bad? The grandmother sighed. She was balance, and we wanted blessing. The girl was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "Do you think the sky still remembers us?" The old woman closed her eyes, and for a moment, just a moment, she felt a breeze. No rain, but the promise of it. That night, as the girl lay beneath the stars, a single white feather drifted down and landed softly near her heart. She didn't scream, didn't run. She picked it up gently, placed it beneath her pillow, and whispered, "I'll remember for them." Since then, people say that in some corners of the world, on islands where the clay runs red and the rivers still sing, rain still comes to those who ask with reverence, not greed. And in the breathless moment before the first drop falls, if you listen closely, very closely, you might hear her voice. "The sky has not forgotten, have you?" And so, in a land that once begged the sky to cry, it was silence that answered last. From Mama Oya's story, we learn something ancient and devastatingly true. Everything in this life comes with a price. Love, power, forgiveness, rain. We live in a world addicted to speed, quick miracles, instant blessings. But like the villagers of New Hope, we forget the balance. We demand, but do not honor. We receive, but do not respect. We beg for rain, then curse the flood. So maybe the real question isn't, why does it cost so much? Maybe the question is, have we been paying attention at all? If this story moved something in you, if you felt the weight of the sky pressing on your chest the way we did while telling it, then don't just scroll away. Subscribe to Tales of Black, where we don't just tell stories, we remember them. We honor our roots. We speak truth through myth. We awaken what the world tried to forget. Because some stories aren't meant to entertain. They're meant to remind us who we are. So, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and return to us where ancestors still whisper and the rain still listens. This is Tales of Black, and the sky is never silent.